If you think that always being away from home is a sign of success, wait until you see this. There is a silent idea circulating around that those who love to stay at home are losing their lives. As if peace could only be found in the noise, the busy schedule, or constant validation. But let me tell you something almost controversial. Maybe these people have discovered something that the fast-paced world has not yet understood. Perhaps the real power lies in solitude, not in the crowd. While many run after stimuli, there are those who find in the home itself home as a sanctuary, a space for recharge, clarity, and emotional decompression. It's not about isolation. It's about inner alignment. It's about going back inside and realizing that your inner world can be more interesting and more transformative than any event out there. If you've ever felt like you need silence to reorganize, that you prefer deep conversations to loud parties, or that your energy simply restores itself when you're alone, maybe that's not shyness. It can be self-awareness. It can be emotional regulation. It could be authenticity blossoming. In this video, you will understand the psychology behind those who choose to stay at home, not as an escape, but as an emotional, mental, and even creative strategy. And perhaps, in the end, you'll realize that loving your own company isn't limitation, it's maturity. There is a huge difference between solitude and solitude, although many people mix the two. Loneliness hurts, it weighs you down, it gives you that feeling of emptiness. The chosen solitude, on the other hand, is different. It brings peace, clarity, and even a certain lightness in the chest. When you walk into your home and feel like you can take a deep breath, that's not isolation, it's emotional security. Silence at home is not the absence of life, it is space for your inner world to organize itself. It is there that self-awareness begins to gain a voice, without the noise of external expectations. You know, when you close the door, take off your shoes and think, now yes? That moment is emotional decompression happening in practice. The body relaxes, the mind slows down, and regulation starts almost on its own. If you want to experience this more consciously, start with something simple: 20 minutes a day without a screen, just you and the environment. It can be reading something that stimulates introspection, such as The Power of Now, or even writing down in a notebook your emotions for the day. Gradually, you'll realize that silence isn't empty, it's fertile ground for inner alignment. And that's when the story starts to get even more interesting. Let's face it, anyone who loves to stay at home has heard at least once that they are antisocial, lazy, or weird. Culture associates value with constant presence, with a full schedule, with always being available. But what many call isolation may actually be emotional regulation in action. Not everyone recharges in noise, some need solitude to keep their peace inside. There is a curious stigma: if you go out every weekend, you are sociable. If he prefers his home as a sanctuary, something must be wrong. But people with more self-awareness understand their own energetic limits. They notice when overstimulation affects mood, productivity, and even creativity. Staying at home, in these cases, is not an escape, it is an emotional decompression strategy. In practice, this means learning to say not today without guilt. Start small, consciously choose a day of the week to preserve your space and watch how your inner world responds. You can use this time for reading, planning, or simply intentional silence. When you honor your own rhythm, you are strengthening your inner alignment. And this choice begins to reveal something even deeper about where this need for refuge is born from. Often, the love for solitude didn't start now, it was built way back. People who grew up in chaotic, unpredictable, or emotionally intense environments learned early on to protect themselves by creating a strong inner world. While the outside was noisy, inside they developed self-awareness, almost like an emotional compass. It was not weakness, it was a smart adaptation. When the child does not find peace in the external environment, he learns to find it within himself. This movement strengthens introspection and often awakens a greater sensitivity to emotional details. She begins to perceive tones of voice, energy shifts, and subtleties that others ignore. Over time, the home becomes a symbol of security, not just physical, but psychological. If you identify with this, try to revisit your story with kindness. Writing about childhood moments can help with emotional decompression and strengthening inner alignment. It's not about reliving pain, but about understanding how your ability to emotional regulation was built. And when we understand the origin, we also begin to see how our sensitivity can be a strength, especially when the world outside becomes too intense. Not everyone processes the world in the same way. People with high sensitivity perceive light, sound, facial expressions, and changes in environment much more intensely. What for some is normal, for others can be a sensory avalanche. After a few hours in a noisy place, the need for solitude isn't drama, it's emotional survival. More sensitive brains tend to dive deep into experiences. They analyze, connect, reflect. Live a lot in the inner world. This strengthens introspection and even creativity, but it also requires frequent breaks for emotional decompression. Home then becomes a space of recalibration, where peace helps the nervous system to slow down. If you suspect you have this profile, start observing your triggers. Which environments drain your energy? Which ones do you restore? Simple adjustments, such as lowering notifications, using noise-canceling headphones, or reserving quiet moments, help with emotional regulation. The more self-awareness you develop, the easier it is to maintain inner alignment. And it's curious to see how, when the mask falls, something even more authentic begins to emerge. There is a fatigue that does not come from work, but from performance. Abroad, almost everyone adjusts their tone of voice, measures words, sustains acceptable versions of themselves. At home, in your home as a sanctuary, this mask begins to fall. And when it falls, something precious appears: authenticity in its pure state. It is in this safe environment that the inner world can express itself without filters. You laugh at what you really find funny, think about what really matters, and rearrange emotions through emotional decompression. This freedom strengthens self-awareness and improves emotional regulation, because you're no longer wasting energy trying to fit into external expectations. The peace that arises from this is not zero noise, it is internal coherence. If you want to deepen this, try creating small reconnection rituals when you get home: consciously changing clothes, taking a long shower, or writing down 3 honest thoughts of the day. It may seem simple, but these gestures reinforce inner alignment. The more you allow yourself to be you, the more you realize that staying at home isn't lifelessness, it's true presence. And then we begin to understand why the culture out there insists so much on the opposite. We live in a culture that applauds those who are always on. Those who appear more, talk more, post more, seem to have more value. Extroversion has become almost synonymous with success, while solitude is seen as something suspicious. But does this constant rush really bring peace? Or just distraction? There is a silent pressure for visibility, productivity, and continuous validation. Social networks reinforce the idea that life is always happening outside your home. But those who develop self-awareness begin to realize the cost of this excessive comparison, anxiety, and emotional exhaustion. Maintaining inner alignment requires courage to get out of the imposed rhythm and respect your own time. In practice, you can start by questioning small things: do I really need to answer everything on time? Do I need to be everywhere? Creating digital boundaries is a powerful form of emotional regulation. Try one offline Saturday per month and use that time for introspection or creativity. You'll notice how your inner world breathes better when it's not competing for attention. And it is precisely in this space that something surprising begins to flourish. There is a powerful difference between being alone by chance and choosing solitude as a tool. When you set aside an intentional time for yourself, something rearranges itself inside. The external noise subsides, and the inner world begins to produce connections that were previously muffled. It is in this space that creativity flourishes with more freedom. Great ideas are rarely born in the midst of constant distraction. They arise in introspection, when there is enough peace to listen to deeper thoughts. Reading 10 pages a day of something that expands your vision, such as Who Thinks Gets Rich or Steal Like an Artist, already activates this inner gear. Solitude ceases to be a social absence and becomes a laboratory of emotional and intellectual growth. If you want to experience this, book a weekly date with yourself at your home. No cell phone, no interruptions, just you and your ideas. Write, draw, plan, or just take your time. This habit strengthens self-awareness, improves emotional regulation, and creates a cycle of emotional decompression. And the more you practice, the more you realize that silence can also be highly productive, especially when the environment is safe. When you're in an environment that's perceived as safe, your body knows. The nervous system slows down, breathing gets deeper, and the level of alertness decreases. In a home that conveys security, the brain understands that it does not need to fight or flee. This sense of peace isn't just emotional, it's biological. Low-threat environments reduce the production of cortisol, the stress hormone. This promotes mental clarity, improves emotional regulation, and increases self-awareness. It's no coincidence that many people get their best insights during moments of quiet solitude. The inner world works best when it's not busy just surviving. You can transform your home into an even more regulating space with simple adjustments: softer lighting, less visual noise, a dedicated corner for reading or introspection. Small emotional decompression rituals, such as light stretching or mindful breathing for 5 minutes, reinforce inner alignment. And when the body learns that that space is safe, something curious happens. The mind begins to question why going out so much seems mandatory. Even though they love solitude, many people feel that little bit of guilt. You are in your home, comfortable, in peace. And suddenly he opens social networks. There are photos, events, laughter, stories happening out there. And then comes FOMO, feeling that the world is moving forward without you. The problem is that the feed shows clippings, not the full reality. Those who have more self-awareness begin to realize that constant comparison disorganizes the inner world. The mind goes into alert, emotional regulation becomes more difficult, and that tranquility built in solitude begins to oscillate. Not because you made the wrong choice, but because you were exposed to stimuli that activate old insecurities. A simple practice is to set conscious boundaries, set specific times for social media, and avoid using them in your emotional decompression moments. Use this time for introspection or something that strengthens your inner alignment, such as writing personal goals or reviewing values. Gradually, you realize that you're not missing anything, you're choosing depth. And this choice begins to directly influence the way you relate to people. Those who value solitude usually do not seek quantity, they seek quality. It's not about having too many contacts, but about having too few bonds that really matter. When you know your inner world well, you become more selective, and that's not coldness, it's self-awareness. You learn that peace also depends on who you choose to share your time with. People who cultivate introspection tend to prefer deep conversations, those that cross the surface and touch on values, fears, and dreams. They quickly realize when an interaction requires too much performance and delivers too little authenticity. Authenticity becomes a criterion, not a luxury. And this strengthens emotional regulation, because shallow relationships often generate unnecessary emotional noise. In practice, this may mean investing more energy in 2 true friendships than in 20 scattered interactions. Booking a quiet coffee at your home can be more nutritious than a crowded event. Deep relationships respect your need for emotional decompression and understand your rhythm. And when you realize this, you begin to see how solitude also shapes your identity and emotional maturity. There's something powerful about feeling comfortable in your own company. When solitude ceases to be discomfort and becomes a choice, you begin to consolidate your identity. Silence strengthens self-awareness, because you listen to your own opinions before absorbing those of others. And that creates a solid foundation of peace that doesn't rely so much on outside approval. People who cultivate introspection develop a clearer sense of values and boundaries. They understand what nourishes them and what wears them down, which directly contributes to emotional regulation. The inner world is no longer a temporary refuge and becomes a center of decisions. This is where inner alignment begins to guide professional, affective, and even spiritual choices. If you want to strengthen this maturity, try reviewing your recent decisions and ask, was this consistent with me or with the expectations of others? Creating this simple habit increases your authenticity and reduces internal conflicts. The home then becomes not just a physical space, but a symbol of emotional stability. And when this stability is consolidated, the great paradox arises that many people still don't understand. At first glance, it may seem that staying at home is avoiding the world. But most of the time, it's not escape, it's inner alignment. It is the conscious choice to preserve peace and protect the inner world itself. Those who practice solitude with intention are not hiding, is getting stronger. There is a huge difference between escaping responsibility and performing emotional decompression. In the first case, there is denial. In the second, there is self-awareness and emotional regulation. The person understands their limits, respects their sensitivity, and returns to the world with more clarity, more authenticity, and even more creativity. If you look honestly, you will realize that the moments of greatest lucidity may have happened in your home, in silence, away from external pressure. It's not about moving away from life, but about reconnecting with it from the inside out. And when this reconnection happens, the way you see success, relationships, and happiness is never the same again. Perhaps the big question is not why do you like to stay at home, but rather what do you find when you are there? Is it peace? Is it clarity? Is it reconnection with your inner world? Because, deep down, solitude is only comfortable for those who have developed enough self-awareness to face their own company. What if staying at home is not a limitation, but emotional maturity? What if this time is exactly what strengthens your emotional regulation, authenticity, and inner alignment? Think about it. How many decisions in your life have been made in the noise? And how many were born in silence? Maybe it's time to transform your home into an even more intentional space. Create emotional decompression rituals. Protect your energy with awareness. Choose relationships that respect your sensitivity. And use introspection as a tool for growth, not as an escape. Now I ask you, are you living according to what really brings you peace? Or just trying to keep up with others? If this content made sense to you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, we don't chase after noise, we build inner strength.